Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today. So I bet you don't know that July is Inflammation Awareness Month. Now, you have probably heard me talk many times about how certain foods or herbs are beneficial to our health. They help to squelch inflammation. Not all inflammation is bad. It is good in the sense that it helps with healing. Times, if inflammation becomes chronic, it can actually be damaging to our health. So, we're all familiar with what we call acute inflammation. So, the kind of inflammation that occurs when you sprain your ankle or you cut yourself. The injured area becomes red, hot, swollen, painful. And acute inflammation is beneficial because it helps the healing process. You get all this blood flow to the area, and it also triggers the immune system to send in white blood cells and inflammatory proteins and other inflammatory chemicals that all help to heal the wound. However, on the flip side, of inflammation is the type of inflammation that can be harmful rather than helpful to us, and it's called chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is just this low grade inflammation. I look at it as just kind of smoldering embers, and it can linger for months or even years. And even though there's no apparent injury, the body still feels like it's under constant attack. So the immune system, in response, is continually pumping out these white blood cells, these inflammatory proteins, and all of the inflammatory chemicals. But what happens is, because there is no specific injury, these inflammatory cells end up attacking our healthy tissues and our healthy organs. So, chronic inflammation has been found to be a culprit in a wide variety of health conditions, including cardiovascular disease, diabetes, dementia, Alzheimer's, cancers, age-related macular degeneration, and there's also evidence that suggests chronic inflammation can contribute to osteoporosis and increase the risk of fractures. And the reason why is that chronic inflammation affects that bone remodeling process. So the process where old bone is kind of broken down and reabsorbed, and then new bone is laid down. And what happens is that inflammation accelerates the breaking down of the old bone, which then leads to bone loss, decrease in bone mass, weakening of the bones, and then making them more susceptible to breaking. So chronic inflammation is generally not caused by a specific injury, but more likely from a diet loaded with trans fats and processed foods and refined sugars. Also, smoking can cause chronic inflammation, stress, poor sleep, obesity, an unhealthy gut, chronic infections like Lyme's disease, and then chronic inflammation can also be in result of toxins, so toxins in the body. So there are a lot of different things that can cause chronic inflammation, many of which we actually can control through our diet and our lifestyle. So some signs and symptoms that you may have chronic inflammation. So chronic body pains, arthritis, muscle pain, constantly being tired or fatigued, mood disorders like depression or anxiety, or things like brain fog, memory issues. If you're someone that gets sick all the time, so frequent colds and infections can be a sign of chronic inflammation. Having a lot of that abdominal fat, having issues with your gut, or your digestion or your bowels, skin rashes, and then dry eyes is also a common symptom of inflammation. Now, there are some blood tests that can be indicative of inflammation. One is called a CRP, or C-reactive protein. And there have actually been some studies that link CRP with decreased bone strength and an increased risk of fractures in postmenopausal women. Homocysteine is another blood marker for inflammation, and again, there's also been studies that show an association between high homocysteine levels in the blood and bone loss. But beyond those two blood markers, it's also important to look at other aspects of inflammation, such as levels of your omega-3 fatty acids, which are, those inflammatory fats that actually help to keep inflammation down. And it's important to look at antioxidants like CoQ10, vitamin E, vitamin A, vitamin C. And you need good amounts of these antioxidants in your body to protect your cells against inflammation. And there are some great tests out there beyond just a typical blood test that we do in the integrative functional medicine world that can test not only for the CRP and the homocysteine, but also for these antioxidants and for all of your essential fatty acids. So if you're interested, please reach out to me and I can certainly do those tests for you. In the meantime, I have put together this anti-inflammatory questionnaire, and it goes through all the different signs and symptoms of inflammation, and then you're going to rate these symptoms on a scale of 0 to 4. And then next week, I'm going to share with you some things you can do to decrease inflammation in the body, like an anti-inflammatory diet and lifestyle changes that you can make. And then after following these recommendations and lifestyle changes and anti-inflammatory diet, you can retake this questionnaire or quiz to see if your inflammation score has decreased. So I'm going to put the link to this inflammation index questionnaire in the comment section of this video, so then you can download it or print it and go ahead and fill it out now, and then in 1 to 2 months from now, and hopefully you'll see those signs and symptoms of inflammation decrease when you take action. As always, I love to hear from you, and I welcome your comments and your questions, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining me.